Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 61 of Ask the CEO with Avrohom. Today, I'd like to introduce a very special guest. He's the managing director of Invidis Consulting, and he also founded Signage Boutique Consultancy in 2006. He held several senior positions in the communication and travel industry before focusing on trends and strategies in digital signage and digital out-of-home. Invidis Consulting is a renowned European consulting firm for digital signage with expertise in consulting, research, communications, and events. It is my pleasure to welcome Florian Rotberg. Welcome, Florian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure having you. So, Florian, there's a growing emphasis in smart cities and smart enterprises, also known as Industrial IoT. How does digital signage play a role in this industry?
Well, to be honest, digital signage not so much in the smart city thing, but more on the retail side of things, the point of sale, because that's where sensors really play an important role. And in the past, when you look back 10 years ago, when digital signage really became, the bigger thing in the retail sphere, digital signage was quite passive, was a silo installation. So people put up some screens, but there was no interaction whatsoever. And this has changed a lot in the past years. With more and more sensors coming in and more companies and retailers are now putting in small sensors so consumers can interact with the screens. And obviously you get a more precise, more detailed message to every consumer.
Interesting. So how does that work? What are some of the use cases with people interacting with the digital signs?
Well, the problem is there are a lot of use cases, but not many business cases. As most retailers and especially most system integrators, love technology, but they often forget, if is there a real business case behind it, A, and B, is there a cultural acceptance of that? Because basically you can do everything. You can measure everything. And looking at China, for example, facial recognition is everywhere there.
Yes.
And would that be possible in North America and Europe? No way, because, cultural acceptance is very different to that. So it's not so much about where you can put them, but where it really makes sense and where they add value. And many retailers and many system integrators are still, trying out where it really makes sense, where it adds value. But more and more are coming. So, for example, in a shop environment, a POS, a person comes up to a screen and the content changes, for example. So you have different content to attract people to the screen. And once a person comes closer than 3 feet or so, the content changes to a more personalized message. So it's something where you just have a simple sensor. Obviously, you could put in, various forms of sensors and IoT devices really to interact with consumers. And one of the biggest challenges we're currently facing are like integrating Alexa and things like this because you don't see them. So how do you tell people, consumers coming into the store that, there's Alexa, there's a microphone, you can speak with the shelf? We're not used to speaking with shelves, at least not our ages. My little kids, they wouldn't mind at all. But most consumers, are not used to that. So that's something where we still have to get accustomed to that and probably have to put some floor graphics also. Please speak to the shelf or get some more information there. So these are more the basic challenges we see.
Exactly. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how that progresses, especially as voice technology becomes more and more prevalent.
Yeah. And with voice, we have probably a bigger challenge in Europe than you guys have in the US because we have so many accents, we have so many languages. And when you talk about Alexa or Google or whatever is available, it works quite well in English, but it only works in US English and British English. If you go to India or other places, it's getting already more difficult, or Singapore, for example. But over here in Europe, it's way, way more complicated. Switzerland, I'm Munich based, so right on the Swiss border. In Switzerland, they have 4 national languages there. And they still haven't introduced, can you imagine? There's still no Amazon and no Alexa in Switzerland. Unbelievable. Huh? People would think they're all over the place, but they're not.
I imagine it'll have a problem with Scottish as well.
Yeah. So that's the thing which is a little bit challenging, but obviously, this will be resolved in due time, and then it's getting more and more. People are getting used to it, and they interact more naturally with shelves or with products.
Great. Now let's delve a little bit deeper into the interaction with people, let's say at the mall. People are very paranoid about Big Brother spying on them and the data privacy. How do you deal with complying with data privacy and protection rules, as well as also being able to provide that personalization that customers want?
it's a very thin line. Basically, first we have to talk about GDPR. I'm not sure if all of your viewers know about that, but that's our big private data privacy law, which came into effect in May this year in Europe. But to be honest, it was also, the blue copy, the copy for California. They're looking at introducing a similar law, and it's very, very new regulations, which really makes it difficult to collect data. To be honest, looking from the consumer side, obviously, it protects consumers about what data is collected and what not. And that consumers have a right to, that companies forget about the data they have collected in the past. So GDPR is very, very important. And if you call it GDPR, whatever it's called in California, other places, it's all about what kind of data do you collect? Do you have permission to collect it? And consumers always have the right to ask, what kind of data do you have stored? And please erase it if I don't want that anymore. So GDPR compliance is a big thing. Secondly, CCTV, everything with cameras. It's very, very difficult. But this differs from country to country. In the UK, for example, CCTV is everywhere. And people are accustomed to that, and there's a cultural acceptance of that. In many other markets on the European continent, it's way more difficult. People are afraid of that. But the biggest problem, which now just came up in the past 2 years, are microphones, is Alexa and all this stuff. So especially staff, they're afraid, that everything they say, everything they do will be recorded and maybe stored somewhere. So we see Workers' Council really working hard against introducing Alexa devices, even if they want to sell it. So even consumer electronics stores, having a hard time really operating them because their staff or their Workers' Council say, please, don't put them into action. Just do some typical things, which is everything stored, but don't put them on live, because we don't want to be recorded. And I don't know if you heard about it, but Walmart just got the new patent last week, or I think it was this week, that they want to install microphones next to the checkout cashier. So they want to tape how their staff is interacting with customers, and then they want to rate how good their customers are. And that's always something where people in Europe, and I also believe in North America, are quite afraid of. So it's always about cultural acceptance, how far you can go. And again, it's not the technology, but it's the cultural acceptance of how far you can go. But they're cool use cases, no question about it. I mean, communicating with a shelf, getting information about it, having sensors. We do a lot of stuff with Touchmapping, for example. I mean, we're consultancy. We don't, we're agnostic on any technologies. We just look what's available there, and then we, try to, propose the best technology available, best solution available to our customers. But Touchmapping is a really cool thing, because most retailers, for example, only measure at the point of sale, at the cashier. How many of the products did I sell in this campaign? But when you do Touchmapping, you can measure and you can really analyze how often a product has been touched or looked at and even put back again in the shelf, so without being purchased. And that's much, much more interesting for retailers, for example. They want to understand why people are not buying a product. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a price point, maybe it's something, but just getting this information using sensors and IoT, that's really, really fascinating.
And that is the technology you work with digital signage?
Yeah, it's a combination always with digital signage. Digital signage are just the screens with it, and digital signage is just a big digital poster, but the sensors are connected to the digital signage in general.
One of the things I read about your company is that the invidis philosophy is that digital is not the icing on the cake, but it needs to be fully integrated to deliver the ROI. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, this is so important, because we've seen so many retail concepts on museums or airports. There's a great retailer, there's a great design agency, they create a great experience. And then at the end, somebody comes, we have to add some digital. And that's always the worst which can happen, because nowadays we're talking about customer journeys, which begin at home, which includes mobile, which includes internet, digital signage, digital out of home, and all digital touch points at the point of sale. And this story needs to be, fluent stories. It's really, really important. So adding digital at the end, what we call icing on the cake, is the worst thing you can do, because it just looks like something has been added to at the end of the day, and you have no seamless user experience. So this is really, really relevant.
With regards to customer journey, so where does the digital signage fit in along the customer journey?
Well, basically in semi-public and full public spaces. The best device, you have your mobile phone, obviously. But companies want to address customers they don't know. And if you don't know the customer, you cannot address them on the phone. Yes, you could with beacons, but then you need an app and everything. So basically, in public areas where you want to address a bigger crowd, one-to-many communication, that's where digital signage is best. And it's a big screen, so it's much easier to evolve and talk and do emotional storytelling on a big screen than on a small screen. So small screen at the end of the day is the best for transaction, obviously. But beforehand, you need to attract people. You need to tell stories. And then big screens, big LED or even standard screens are much, much better. And to be honest, the most screens you will see, digital signage screens, are nowadays 19 to 16, so not 16 to 9. Because if people see a 16 to 9 screen, like a horizontal one, it feels like TV to them. So for them, it's a laid back, so they take a little bit distance and they just, look at it. But when you turn the screen around, it's very simple, just by 90 degrees, it feels like a digital poster. So it's much more engaging. So these are small things where you can really, interact with your customers and with the audience much more effective.
So Florian, tell me, what do you think will be the next disruptor in the industry?
I've seen so many technologies coming and going. I mean, we had 3D, for example. It was horrible. 3D was never meant to put in a public space, because 3D is great, or some people thought it would be great to watch on a 3D, when you sit on the sofa. That's fine because you're in a fixed distance to the screen, you're in the right angle, so that's fine. But usually people pass by a screen in public spaces in digital signage, so 3D never really worked. So forget about 3D. Now we had, 4K, 8K. Do we really need 8K content in public screens? No, but eventually we will have it because all screens will have it. So these are things we just have to live with it. But it's not driven by demand. It's just because the industry, in Korea and China, they just produce 4 and 8K. So we have to live with it.
It's just a natural progression of the technology.
Exactly. So where we see the biggest disruptions, obviously from AI in various forms. And it's very interesting, to look what kind of influence AI has in the B2B world, because usually most of the AI stuff is done for consumers, obviously. Google and all of them do this great kits, and they do fantastic solutions for consumers and for web, but not for B2B. So for B2B, you can get a kit from them, and then you need partners who really understand the industry, the vertical market, to take this kit and create new experiences, new solutions for each industry. And we see a lot of AI stuff coming there, which is really interesting. So. Not only voice commands, which obviously it's getting better and better with AI, but many other solutions which are quite fascinating.
Yeah, for sure, I agree with you. I think that with regards to AI, we were talking about the face recognition technology as well as the touch sensors, analyzing the patterns of people picking things and not buying them. So I definitely agree with you on the AI.
Yeah, AI is really interesting, and to be honest, also cheap to implement. That's great because it's cloud-based at the end of the day, and you usually need some cheap sensors you need to integrate. So it's very easy and it scales fantastically. So we see great stuff coming up, and some cool stuff really coming. Also, it's doing predictions, for example. With AI, there are some solutions where we can really, just go in a store, take a little movie with an iPhone, and you upload it, and you get a prediction of where most people will look at in the first 10 seconds when they come to the store. So so you don't need these funky research goggles, which is really expensive, very difficult to get good data at. But we just use standard commoditized, equipment to really predict how the effects and how the experience in the stores are really working. That's fantastic.
This is going to be such a game changer because I know that being a marketer, you have to be able to understand the customer psychology, what they're going to look at, where they're going to look at. And if you go back to just traditional marketplace where people used to have their carts out in the market and would arrange their fruit and their stuff, and everything would have to be arranged in such a way to catch people's attention. And this is especially important in the retail space. So this is going to be a game changer because let's say somebody just doesn't have that eye. They don't understand how to arrange items. AI will just do it for them.
Exactly. And there's so many small tools already. We just talked to a dairy company, and they just introduced a small app for all their retailers, so they can, optimize the way the yogurts are in the fridge, So that's something because they say, we can do this with AI because you can analyze it immediately, and we give you immediate feedback, how to optimize your shelf. And that's really cool.
I can't wait for that technology to come out. What about augmented reality? Do you see any role AR playing in your industry?
AR, yes. VR, no. VR is more entertainment focused, and you dive in your own world. But brick and mortar retail needs the best of both worlds, and AR really makes sense there. And you see it often in car showrooms, for example. So you can, walk around a car, for example, which is showcased there. You can look inside. You can see how the engine works and everything. You can get this information layer on top of reality. And so AR makes sense. But to be honest, AR only works with, to be honest, 25 to 35-year-olds. And older people are still reluctant to use that. They still prefer, a human being helping them. And to be honest, that's the case for everyone, If you have good staff at your point of sale, that's the best thing you can have. And maybe you saw what we do. We always proclaim, we always say, don't overdo digital. Sometimes, digital, doesn't solve your problem. So the best thing you can have is good sales stuff. Obviously, it's very expensive, and many health retailers are not willing to invest into good stuff. But if you don't have good stuff, try to support your existing staff with digital devices so they can be as knowledgeable as a website. But don't try to copy Amazon. You will never beat Amazon on a functional level. So you really need to tell stories. You need to be good where brick and mortar is really different. And we have one really cool thing: are fitting rooms. Fitting rooms is one of the most interesting things for brick and mortar retail, the fashion industry, because lighting in fitting rooms is always horrible. Probably next time you go in there and you always see lighting is horrible. It's small, it's tiny, the lighting is really bad. But 70% of the people decide against buying a garment because of bad lighting. And this is the only, that's where brick and mortar is so unique compared to Amazon and everything you buy online. So just putting some good lighting, and we have done some stuff for some fashion retailers with RFID. So you come inside the fitting room and the lighting condition adapts to the clothing you have with you. So if you have a suit with you, you get like an office light or a TV studio light or something like this. Or if you buy lingerie, you get candlelight lighting. And it's so effective. We have sales uplift of more to 80% for lingerie, for example, because it just feels different. That's storytelling. That's being emotional at the point of sale.
And it's just a tiny change that you make, and you increase your business exponentially.
Exactly. And fitting rooms this is one of the biggest challenges in North America, for example. Fitting rooms are so horrible. It's always,
a little tiny closet in the back of the store.
Exactly. And there's one cool, I just been to New York a couple of weeks ago, and Nordstrom opened a new store really close to Columbus Circus, a new men's department store there. And they really invested great into their fitting rooms. So it's really cool. They even have movable ones. So they say, and on Saturday, we moved them to a different department because there's more demand for that. And they really have integrated lighting. And so it's not as cool, as I've seen other things, but it's already the right way. So they understand how important the fitting room is. And that's where the decisions are being taken. And so investing into fitting room and making people feel comfortable about it. I don't know if you've heard about, we have in Europe a very cheap, very, very cheap fashion retailer. It's called Primark. They're from Ireland. And it's very cheap. You pay $2-3, much cheaper than Zara or H&M or so. They're really darn cheap. And they now introduced the first fitting room for 8 people. So the teenagers are lining up to go there together. And they can plug in their phone, charge their phone. They have little Bluetooth loudspeakers. So, they feel comfortable about it. They have 30 minutes. And they just, take photos of themselves, post them on Snapchat and everything. And then they buy this stuff. It's incredible. So it's just a stage. It's just this experience you can offer in brick and mortar where digital really can help. And it's not, we're not talking about having a display inside the fitting room. Yes, for some retailers it could be a solution, but for most it's not about improving digital all over the place. It's just the small things which really, make this experience unique.
Don't you find it interesting that with all this advancement in technology, it all comes back to the human experience?
Absolutely. That's why we're always saying, don't first look, what kind of digital touch points you can add to your thing, but what is your experience and what is the mindset of consumers? So many retailers and so many, our customers don't understand and don't analyze the mindset. So they don't know what people are coming in when they come. So do they just want to browse around, or do they really want to buy something? Like in the supermarket, you go there because you need something. You don't want to buy some milk or some stuff. It's a total different mindset. But when you go in a Nordstrom, maybe you just want to browse around on a Saturday morning and just, look what's happening there. So you need to understand the mindset of your customers and then really, to design the right customer experience. And that's the biggest challenge. Pretty much every single customer has a different customer journey and a different mindset. And you need to cluster them and to look, who's the most potential customer for you.
Florian, what keeps you motivated every day?
Oh, I love what I do.
That's it, right?
I do this for so many years, and it's always, for me, being a consultant, the great thing is, every 2-3 weeks, I'm going to a different business. A totally different category, totally different vertical market. So, sometimes it's do-it-yourself, different stores. Then I go to a fashion store, fashion customer. Then it's something about furniture. So it's always, getting understanding, analyzing in a few hours, in a few days to really understand what the needs of each, retail sector is, or a museum, for example. It's so different. And then really, understanding and convincing the customer, working with the customer and convincing him, to reassess what they've done in the past, to understand what the customer journey is, and then to create new experiences. We're like digital architects. We don't do anything ourselves. I couldn't, drill a hole in the wall. I wouldn't do that. My wife wouldn't allow that at home, so so I won't do that to my customers. But it's just creating this experience together with with fantastic experts. That's really driving me every morning. And I love it.
Wonderful. I love that energy. So there's a statistic that many small businesses fail in the first year in business. Where do you think entrepreneurs go wrong?
Oh, there are many things. When I started the business 12 years ago, I did a few things right. Obviously, I also did some mistakes. You only get better by doing mistakes, to be honest. There's not a single person that doesn't do a mistake. But you need to understand, what you really want to offer, and you need to do a good business plan. And don't think you're the best one in the world. You're a one-man show usually in the beginning, and you need to stick to a few things where you can be really good. And then obviously add expertise. And especially over here in Europe, it doesn't mean you need to hire people immediately. You just need to have an ecosystem of experts you can take along, to your first customers. And once you have the feeling, business picking up, then you get more and more there. So being focused on where you're really good at, and then and believing obviously in your idea. That's really important, because especially in the beginning, there are times where people will say, oh, it's not going to work, or you stand in front of the mirror and said, oh damn, not a single dollar revenue in the past 4 weeks or whatever, is it really the right thing? Sometimes you need to, you need to wait a little bit, and try to, to move around and try to optimize a little bit. But obviously also to understand, to fully, to understand, okay, maybe I did a mistake, or maybe it's not going the right way. Then obviously after a few months, you have to decide, okay, I have to realign my business and look which direction really makes sense. And talk with customers. Don't believe that you know more about your customers than your customers. It's never the case. Ask them as much as possible, especially in the beginning. Get an understanding what drives them and where their pain points are. To be honest, understanding pain points is the key to everything. The first thing I always do when I come on a new project, I want to analyze, I want to understand what are the 5 most important pain points. Because I know that's where it hurts the most. But to be honest, it's also where the customer is willing to spend the most money on our services, on professional services. So understanding pain points is really, really essential.
So talking about the mistakes, if you could go back in time, turn back the clock 12 months, what kind of things would you do differently, if any?
12 months, I'm not sure, 3-4 years. To be honest, we do a lot of business around the world. We focused for the first 6-7 years, we only did Germany, then Europe. And then customers ask us, oh, could you help us, in Russia? Could you help us in China? Could you come to Chile or to Argentina? And we did a lot of stuff there. But it's, just traveling back and forth and, spending so much time on the plane, you lose the focus a little bit. In the beginning, it's fascinating. But after a while, you get a feeling, okay, better focus on one geographical region, and grow with customers is fine, but try to focus where you're good at, content-wise as well as geographical-wise, because it's very difficult to do business in various countries. So maybe that's one of the things. And then when you partner up with other companies, when you do joint ventures or so, it's always difficult. It looks always fantastic on paper, but operations is always a different animal, unfortunately.
Isn't it funny how things are always exciting at the honeymoon, but then once things die down a little bit, once that excitement dies down, now reality hits and you're thinking, all right, where do you go from there?
Especially politics. Never underestimate politics, of your joint venture partners or even your customer side or so. So many decisions are taken because of politics, not because it's the right thing to do, but because somebody feels it should be that way, or some important person there, whatever. So politics plays a huge role. That's something which is very difficult to predict, And you have to be flexible, and sometimes also to understand. Okay, maybe it's we enter the phase where we should separate again. Also, that's sometimes the case.
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens a lot. Florian, where are you looking to take this business, say, in the next 5 years?
Well, I just said my biggest mistake was to go too fast internationally. At the end of the day, that's still the way we want to go. If I look, I had, a couple of years ago, I had a lot of employees, and now I'm a little bit back to a core team, and I want to keep it that way, but I want to build this, this team of experts around me. And because we work in so many different vertical markets, you always need vertical experts for every single project. And that's something I probably want to grow, get more people around me, get this ecosystem of experts which you can hire for certain projects, but which share the same vision and people who share the same quality, which is really important. Because, if you take them to a customer, you need to make sure, that they deliver what you promise your customer. So that's something, offering quality to our clients is something which you always need to improve. And you always need to reinvent yourself. What I offer today, or what I'm telling you today, I wouldn't have told you 3 years ago, because technology was different and demand was different. So we don't know. And to be honest, just looking at politics, we have no clue. We have Brexit, we have Donald Trump, we have all of these things, 2 years ago, the world was completely different. And it's very different. And just waking up every morning and reading the paper and looking up what's happening, it's always very exciting. Yeah, I think we all have to keep flexible.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about clients, who would be an ideal client for you?
Well, clients usually are retailers or vendors, big vendors, obviously, like display vendors also, who really better want to understand, what their customers, what the demands of their customers are, and how to optimize their products and their service portfolio to cater to their target group. So that's what we usually work for. So to be honest, 90% are probably retailers. And we also work for a lot of private equity companies who are interested in acquiring some of these companies. So we do a lot of due diligence because we understand what the demand of markets are and so. So it's mainly retailers, private equity or the finance community, as well as vendors of the industry.
Great. Florian, I know you're a busy guy. I'm going to let you go. But just before we do, how do people find you?
Well, it's very easy. It's invidis.de, and also .com, but .de is our German website. And the next few days, you will also see some international information there. We also have a cool joint venture, and if you're interested in this one, we are doing conferences around the world together with ISE, Integrated Systems Europe. We just had our last conference 2 weeks ago with 500 people attending, and we have more conferences coming up in Mexico. So I will be in Mexico mid-August. We do conference in Moscow and Dubai and in Amsterdam and many places. And so we're coming close to where your viewers hopefully are, and just educate them and show what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. Are you going to be in New York anytime soon?
Oh yeah, I'm in New York every couple of weeks. Yeah.
Great. Well,
I let you know. Maybe we can have a coffee or so.
Exactly. Yeah, looking forward to that. Florian, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience?
Difficult. Be yourself, to be honest, don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to copy anyone, and be yourself, be unique, be original. And yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And then you have, at least for me, the recipe for success, be honest and help and try to, help your customers, and don't try to convince them something you believe is the best, but try to listen to them and then help them, getting better every day.
Love it. To quote Gary Vaynerchuk, just do you.
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Florian, I really enjoyed having you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom. And thank you for joining the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Have a great day.